Have we ever had a winter like this before? Hi folks, Robert Lowell Goller here, and thank you for joining me outside of Vidler's on Main Street for our weekly chats about local history. Now, it's not negative 20 degrees, as the thermometer says here. They're having a little trouble with the thermometer, so this isn't accurate. But I thought it'd be pretty neat to stand outside the thermometer to talk about the history of cold weather. It's been cold. It's been really cold. In fact, on Monday, we ended our 9-day streak of temperatures under 20 degrees. It's been bitterly cold. But that only is the 5th longest streak of weather under 20 degrees. So there's been 4 other times where there's been a longer period of time of cold weather. We were out shoveling last week, and one of my neighbors had asked me, he said, "Hey, you're a historian. Have we ever had a colder winter, a more challenging winter?" And yes, we've had. Again, we did not break a record this past week, but it certainly has been cold. The record goes to February 3rd, 1961. So on this day, in 1961, we finally broke a 16-day cold streak of temperatures below 20 degrees. Just for comparison, we had 9 days this past week, and they suffered through 16 days. And not only was it below 20 degrees, it was well below 20 degrees. Temperatures went into the negative territory, below zero, for a very long time, and in some places they were talking negative 20s. Now, some of those were unofficial records unofficial numbers back then, but it was still really, really cold. And cars wouldn't start. Local garages had reported that several hundred motorists couldn't start their cars because of the batteries. It was too cold. Meteorologists this last week have been talking about 1961 having held the record. So I went back into the local newspaper, Easter Advertiser, and looked up what was going on in that 1961, and a lot of things sound familiar. Cars not starting, pipes freezing, warnings about making sure, doing whatever you can to keep the pipes going, the water flowing through the pipes so that you wouldn't have frozen pipes in your house. They had so much snow falling that before and during this cold spell, they had no place to put it. The village DPW was talking about having to ship it outside of the main streets to try to get it out, and they just couldn't do it. Embankments, snowbanks were so tall that they couldn't see around it. There were some safety issues about it. This all sounds familiar, right? They were having the same trouble in 1961 because there wasn't a thaw, and the snow kept just piling up. 3 inches, 6 inches at a time, and it was just not thawing. And this was a region-wide problem, the cold anyway. New York State, up through Rochester, going up and beyond. It wasn't just East Aurora. Similar to the cold weather that we're having today, that's even extending down to Florida. So that was 1961. We've had, there was a second place goes to a 10-day below 20 degrees back in 1979, in February of 1979. But you don't have to go back to the 60s and 70s to find days like this. There were 8 days in 2018, just a couple years ago, that were below 20 degrees. And we often feel when we're living through it that it's the coldest, so that it's unprecedented. We hate that word. Historians hate the word unprecedented because most things have happened before, but we've forgotten about it. But when you're living through it, it's very difficult to imagine that this has happened before, and to look at a broader perspective. But this has happened before. 2018, we had 8 days below 20 degrees. That was, those 8 days were what we broke this last time with the 9 days in 2026. 1899, similarly, there was an 8-day stretch below 20 degrees. The February 16th edition of 1899 of the Easter Advertiser, the headline said unprecedented cold. And again, we don't, they called it unprecedented, but historians and meteorologists hate that term because things generally are not unprecedented. They've happened before, but that was their headline. Gas wells had frozen up. Again, water lines froze. And the Easter Advertiser joked back in 1899 that they said, "This is the plumber's harvest season. plumbers were very busy helping folks unfreeze their frozen water lines even back in 1899. So it's very helpful. As many of you know, I journal, and a lot of things that you'll see in not only my journal but other journals that are in archives and the town archives. Is that people talk about the weather. It's one of the things that affects our lives so much. And so that's generally, a lot of people do talk about the weather. We do, just in conversation, but in our journals as well. And I look back and look at what the weather is like, and I always notice a pattern that late January, last 2 weeks of January, and maybe the first week of February, maybe first 2 weeks of February, it is always bitterly cold. The coldest, not always, but it's the coldest time of the year, meteorologically speaking. And so I always try to gear up for this time of year, knowing that it's going to happen, that it's happened before, and it's certainly not unprecedented. So it's generally the same few weeks each and every year. And another lesson to learn from it is that it comes to an end. This cold weather does not last forever, and actually by mid-February, generally after these, if history is any indication, we will have a thaw. They're actually talking about one coming by mid-February, and that's what the Easter Advertiser reported in 1899. The excitement over the temperatures finally getting to a point where the snow started to thaw. They said, quote, "All are rejoiced at the moderation of temperatures now prevailing." So the lesson to be learned here is to hang in there. It will end. It may feel like it's the only time this has ever happened and that it's never going to end, but it will get warmer. And one of the things I always like to think about is because of our snow, because of the cold winters that we have spectacular summers. We have green summers. You go to other places in the country and in the world, you visit down south, you visit out west, they don't have the green grass that we have, the evergreen trees, the trees that we have, and the summers. And I think we also appreciate our summers more because of the winters. We certainly look forward to them more. So hang in there. This isn't unprecedented, and we'll get through it.